Thank you very much, Speaker, for recognizing me. And let me start by saying that I appreciate the member from Brampton, Gore Malton, for bringing this motion forward in this House because it reaffirms the government's position on the issue of street checks and carding. It very well encapsulates and summarizes the position that we have been articulating from the very beginning, Speaker. And I want to take this opportunity again to restate to the House very clearly where we stand on the issue of street checks and carding, and then also highlight to you the steps we've taken and the next steps to come. Speaker, as I have said before, I want to start with two very important foundational standards for us in this issue. Number one, that there is zero tolerance when it comes to any kind of racial profiling or discrimination in interactions that our police engages in. The Police Services Act, Speaker, is very clear that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Ontario Human Rights Code must always be complied with, and we will make sure that police practices are in conformity with that requirement in the Police Services Act and, of course, the rights outlined by the Charter and the Human Rights Code. Secondly, Speaker, a very important foundational piece is that we as a government stand opposed, Speaker, to any arbitrary or random stops by police simply to collect information when there are no grounds or reason to do so. And Speaker, I have been on behalf of the government and as the Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services have been very clear on that point. The very first press conference that I did when we announced that we'll be bringing regulations dealing with street checks on June the 16th and then subsequently, Speaker. And in fact, in my conversations with the member opposite who brought this motion forward, I've restated that position many times. I think he admitted that he and I are exactly on the same page, and I appreciate that. In fact, Speaker, on September the 1st, 2015 of this year, I put out a statement after having extensive consultations across the province, and I think attended about 7 of those we had 7, I attended about 5 of those consultations, and I was happy to see the member opposite at 2 of those consultations, where we heard from people and their lived experiences, and it was emotional, Speaker. And I will never discount anybody's lived experiences in terms of what they may have faced. And not just in Toronto, and not just in Peel region, but we're talking about Ottawa and London and Thunder Bay and Hamilton and other communities across the province. So as a result, Speaker, because we heard very loud and clear as to what the people were telling us, on September 1st, I put out a statement, and I just want to read one part of that statement because I think it's instructive, where it says that we have heard from the community that street checks, by definition, are arbitrary as well as discriminatory, and therefore cannot be regulated. They must simply be ended. The province agrees that these types of stops must end, period. And Speaker, that is a very clear statement in terms of our intentions of stopping this unconstitutional and discriminatory practice. As a result, Speaker, of the consultations and the good advice we've received, we've been working very hard in drafting the regulations. And we've been meeting with policing partners like the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, the Police Association of Ontario, the Toronto Police Association, but also our civil liberties partners like the African Canadian Legal Clinic, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, the Ontario Human Rights Commission and the Information Privacy Commission, along with the Ontario Ombudsman, have also been giving us advice. And Speaker, what we're doing through our regulation is twofold. One, as I mentioned earlier, banning or prohibiting the practice of street checks as an arbitrary, a random way of stopping people when there's no cause or reason simply to collect information. But Speaker, we're going a step further. And what we're doing is that where there is reasonable grounds, and this, as the member opposite said, that it's appropriate for police to stop when there is reasonable grounds to stop somebody because there's suspicion of some illegal activity or you want to prevent illegal activity, that even those interactions which are voluntary in nature must take place, Speaker, in a rights framework, that the Charter and the Human Rights Code shall apply. And what are those principles around providing cautions, around receipting? How long do you keep the information? What happens to that information? How do you store that information? What is appropriate training when it comes to police engaging in those voluntary interactions? And of course, Speaker, accountability and transparency of the information collected so that we can better understand whether this type of practice is effective or not. So, Speaker, in my limited time, I want to be once again be absolutely clear that the government is committed to banning street checks or carding as an arbitrary way of stopping people and collecting information when there's no cause. But, Speaker, we also want to ensure that when the police can stop because there is reasonable grounds, that stops take place in a rights framework as well. Therefore, Speaker, I support the motion because it reaffirms our position that we have been saying. We have been working very hard in drafting these regulations so that public can have access to them, and then police services know exactly what the rules are. And in coming weeks, Speaker, we will be speaking about those regulations as well. Thank you very much.